There is something extraordinary buried deep within you, something that cannot be measured by titles, grades, status, or possessions. It isn't loud, it doesn't beg for attention, but it exists, burning, waiting, calling. It's the unshakable truth that you are not born to live an average life. You were not created to settle for what the world gives you. You were designed with intention. You were born to rise, to lead, to grow, to conquer your inner world, and in doing so, shape the outer one. Look around, mediocrity is everywhere. It screams through excuses, echoing from those who gave up before they ever began. It hides behind comfort, disguised as realism. It whispers, just get by. Don't reach too far. Stay safe. But what if that whisper is the very lie keeping you from everything you've ever wanted? What if your limits aren't real? What if they're inherited, passed down by fear, repetition, and the small-minded thinking of others? The truth is brutal, but it's also freeing. Most people never achieve what they truly desire because they never believe they can. Not deeply, not unwaveringly. They are ruled by a mindset that was never theirs to begin with. A mindset shaped by fear, failure, and the opinions of those who never dared to dream for themselves. But just because you were raised in limitation doesn't mean you must remain in it. Just because you were conditioned to survive doesn't mean you weren't built to thrive. There's a reason your soul aches for more. There's a reason you can't settle, why comfort feels empty, and why ordinary doesn't satisfy. That's not a flaw. That's the call. That's the alarm clock of your potential ringing louder each day you ignore it. Deep down, you know. You were built for more than working to the edge of burnout just to live a life of routine. Deep down, you know you weren't made to wake up dreading your days. You were created for purpose, for impact, for something meaningful that sets your heart on fire, but that purpose is not handed to you. It is not waiting in a degree, a promotion, or someone else's validation. It begins in one place, your mind. Your mindset is the gatekeeper to everything you desire. Not some of it, all of it. You can train your body, gather information, chase success. But if your mind is wired for fear, scarcity, or doubt, you will self-sabotage the very things you claim to want. Because the outer world always reflects the inner one. If your thoughts are poisoned by limitation, so will your life be. The moment you understand that your reality is not just a product of your circumstances, but a direct extension of your mind, you unlock a power most people never realize they have. And once you taste it, once you own it, everything begins to shift. You stop blaming, you stop waiting, you stop seeking permission, and you start building. You start thinking differently, showing up with a fire that others can feel. That is the power of a mastered mind. You don't need more luck. You don't need more time. You don't even need more talent. What you need is to think differently, to break free from the mental cages that have kept you playing small. And it won't be easy. It's not supposed to be. Rewiring your mind is a battle. It's a confrontation with your past, your wounds, your fears. But it's also the only path to becoming who you were meant to be. Because here's the truth: your future will not be determined by your conditions, but by your mindset. You can either accept that or ignore it, but it won't change the reality. Mindset is the root. Mindset is the foundation. And until you change it, you'll keep repeating cycles, chasing shortcuts, wondering why nothing sticks. So let it be known. You were not born average. You were not made to live a life decided by others. You were created with the raw potential to build, to lead, to overcome, and to become something greater than you've been told you could be. And if you truly want to get what you deserve, not what you settle for, you must start with the one battlefield that matters most: your mind. There is no shortcut. There is no easy way. There is only a decision to rise, to take ownership, to master the mindset that unlocks everything. And the question is not whether you're capable. The question is, are you ready? Asterisk every outcome in life, every success, every failure, every breakthrough, and every setback begins with a single, invisible force. A thought. One thought. That's all it takes to start building a new future or reinforcing an old prison. Thought is the blueprint. It's the seed from which action grows, and action becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Identity becomes reality. If you trace anything in life back to its origin, it always begins in the mind. Thoughts are not harmless. They are not fleeting. They are the architects of destiny. What you allow to live in your mind will soon live in your life. Let that sink in. If your inner world is filled with fear, anxiety, self-doubt, and comparison, your outer world will begin to mirror that chaos. Not because life is cruel, but because life responds to the frequency of your belief system. What you think, you feel. What you feel, you act on. What you act on, you become. And yet, most people treat their thoughts as background noise, never realizing that they are the command center. They leave their minds on autopilot, fueled by past programming, emotional reactions, and the loudest voices around them. They absorb negativity from the world and replay it like a broken record, wondering why they feel powerless, directionless, unfulfilled. But the problem is never the world needs the lack of conscious control over the inner dialogue. The conversation you have with yourself daily is the most powerful force shaping your experience. Your mind is a garden. Thoughts are seeds. You can plant seeds of courage, discipline, growth, and belief, or you can let weeds of fear, doubt, and insecurity grow wild. The mind does not care what you plant. It will return what you sow. Water negativity, and it will give you excuses. Nurture strength, and it will give you breakthrough. This is not philosophy, it's a law. It's a principle as consistent as gravity. When you understand this, you begin to think on purpose. You begin to choose thoughts the way you choose fuel. For a fire, carefully, intentionally, powerfully. You start asking, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this thought building the person I want to become or keeping me chained to the past? And in that awareness, your power returns. Because power isn't found in control over others. It's found in control over your mind. Most people try to change their lives through force. They hustle harder, push more, chase endlessly. But transformation begins in stillness, in silence, in the conscious redirection of thought. You don't need to chase what's already possible. You need to become the person who naturally attracts. That begins by thinking like that person would. The identity you hold in your mind becomes the reality you hold in your hands. What does that mean in practical terms? It means when your mind says, I can't, you replace it with, I'm learning. When it says this is too much, you replace it with, I was built for this. When it says I'll never make it, you respond, watch me. You don't need to argue with your doubt, you just need to replace it with better programming. Over time, those replacement thoughts become your dominant thoughts. And dominant thoughts shape your dominant results. The truth is, most people's greatest enemy is not the world, or their upbringing, or their lack of opportunity. It's the story they've told themselves for so long that they've begun to believe it as law. But stories can be rewritten. Beliefs can be rebuilt. And once they are, everything changes, not because the world suddenly gets easier, but because you've become stronger, more focused, more resilient from the inside out. There's a reason the most successful individuals in any field talk about mindset. It's not a cliche. It's us, the cornerstone. Without it, talent crumbles under pressure. Without it, goals become prisons. Without it, potential dies in silence. But with the right mindset, even the most impossible circumstances become stepping stones to something greater. With the right thoughts, you don't just survive storms, you become the storm. So guard your thoughts like gold. Train them like a warrior. Shape them like an artist. Because what you allow to live in your mind will always make its way into your life. Think with purpose. Think with vision. Think like the person who already has what you want. Eventually, you'll become that person. Your reality is not random. It is a reflection. And it's time to ask yourself one question. What are my thoughts reflecting right now? Are they aligned with the life I say I want? There is a voice within the mind, subtle, persistent, and toxic. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it doesn't guide. It undermines, it questions every move, doubts every effort, mocks every ambition. That voice is the inner critic, and for most people, it's the loudest one they know. It hides behind perfectionism. It disguises itself as logic. It calls itself realistic. But in truth, it's a parasite, a self-inflicted mental enemy that thrives on insecurity and feeds on hesitation. This voice didn't appear by accident. It was shaped over time, born from rejection, reinforced by failure, nurtured by comparisons, and cemented by years of self-judgment. It doesn't speak truth, it repeats familiar lies. Lies like, you're not good enough. You'll embarrass yourself. You always mess things up. And the more it's entertained, the more it controls. It's not because it's powerful, but because it's familiar. And familiarity breeds influence. The inner critic doesn't need facts, it only needs your attention. And the moment it has your attention, it begins to build its case. It points to past mistakes as proof of permanent limits. It exaggerates flaws while ignoring strengths. It predicts failure before you even begin, and eventually it convinces you that the safest option is to stop trying altogether. That's the tragedy. The critic doesn't kill dreams by force. It convinces you to walk away from them yourself. But here's the truth. That voice can be defeated. It's not your intuition. It's not your protector. It's not your identity. It is a distorsuna. Broken record, looping thoughts you never chose, but somehow started believing, and it can be overwritten. The key is not to argue with it, but to outgrow it. To build a new internal standard so strong, so deeply rooted in truth, that the critic becomes irrelevant. This begins with awareness. Most people are so used to the critic that they no longer notice it. It becomes background noise, quietly shaping decisions, draining energy, and shrinking confidence. But when you start paying attention, when you begin to notice how often that voice is negative, repetitive, and baseless, you realize something powerful. You are not that voice. You are the one hearing it. And that means you can choose to stop listening. Refuse to let that voice have the final word. When it speaks, don't respond. Replace "I always fail" with "I learn fast." Replace "I don't belong here" with "I've earned my place." Replace "what if I'm not ready" with "I'm ready enough to begin." It's not about fake confidence. It's about giving your mind new instructions. Because your brain is always listening, and it believes what it hears most often. Don't wait for the inner critic to disappear. It won't, not completely, but it doesn't need to disappear for you to dominate it. You simply need to be louder. Not externally, internally. Louder with truth. Louder with belief. Louder with purpose. The critic thrives in silence and passivity. But when you start speaking life, purpose, and power into your own thoughts, the critic begins to lose ground. Affirmations are not wishful thinking. They are mental armor. Every time you choose to speak strength over yourself, you weaken the hold of the critic. Every time you act in spite of fear, you create evidence that your doubt was lying. And the more evidence you build, the quieter that voice becomes. Rewriting this mental script doesn't happen overnight. It takes discipline. It takes repetition. But most of all, it takes the decision to no longer be bullied by your own mind. To say, "This ends with me." To draw a line in the sand and declare that no thought not one gets to live rent-free in your head unless it's aligned with growth, courage, and self-respect. Understand this: no one is born confident. Confidence is not a trait, a skill. And like any skill, it's built by action. The more you do, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you grow. And growth silences the critic. Not because the voice goes away, but because you've grown too strong to listen. So kill the inner critic, not with hate, but with truth. Not with resistance, but with awareness. Not with noise, but with clarity. Let your new thoughts become your new voice. Let your belief become your new identity. And let that identity lead you into the life you deserve, free from mental chains, free from invisible ceilings, and free from the lies that once held you back. Discipline. The word alone makes some people flinch. It's misunderstood, often confused with restriction, punishment, or rigidity. But real discipline has nothing to do with punishment. It is the highest expression of self-respect. It is a daily reminder that your future matters more than your momentary feelings, that the life you want is worth more than the comfort you're tempted to settle for. It is the invisible bridge that connects where you are with where you want to be. Freedom is the goal, but freedom is never free. It has a cost. And that cost is discipline. Without discipline, dreams remain fantasies. Without discipline, potential rots into regret. Without discipline, life becomes reactive, constantly responding to distractions, impulses, and emotions rather than living with purpose and intention. The undisciplined wait for motivation. The disciplined act regardless of it. And that's where the shift begins. Motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a decision. Feelings are fleeting. They rise and fall with mood, whether energy or environment. But decisions made in clarity, decisions backed by purpose, outlast any emotional slump. You will not always feel ready. You will not always feel strong. If you are disciplined, you don't have to feel it to follow through. You don't have to want to, you just have to decide to. The truth is, you can't trust every emotion, but you can trust the system you build. And discipline is that system. It's waking up even when you're tired. It's showing up when it's inconvenient. It's doing what's right, not what's easy. And the more you do this, the more power you gain over yourself. That power is where confidence grows, not from talent, not from comfort, but from consistency. People think discipline is limiting, but it's the opposite. Lack of discipline is what traps people, traps them in guilt, in missed opportunities, in lives they tolerate instead of lives they love. Every time you choose excuses over action, you pay a hidden tax on your self-esteem. You know what you should have done, you feel it, and it chips away at your trust in yourself. But when you choose discipline, even in small moments, you build self-trust. You prove to yourself that your word means something, and that trust becomes unshakable. There's a power that only the disciplined ever access. The power to act without waiting for the perfect time. The power to push forward through resistance. The power to create habits so strong they operate automatically when others hesitate. Discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't always look impressive. But it's the quiet force that builds empires in the shadows. It's what makes a person consistent when everyone else quits. It's what keeps momentum alive when motivation dies. Discipline is also the greatest act of self-love, because it says, I refuse to keep letting my future self down. It says, I will not hand my potential to laziness, distractions, or temporary pleasure. It says, I'm willing to do what's hard now so I can live free later. That's love. That's power. That's ownership. And make no mistake, discipline is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's not about never slipping. It's about always returning. It's not about living with pressure. It's about living with purpose. Even when you fail and you will, discipline brings you back faster. It shortens the gap between a mistake and the next move. It turns setbacks into lessons. It turns struggle into growth. If you want freedom, real freedom, the freedom to live life on your terms, to feel peace within yourself, to wake up proud of the path you're on, then discipline is the price. Not once, not occasionally, but daily. That's the standard. And once you accept that, something shifts. The struggle stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. Because you're no longer at the mercy of moods, impulses, or obstacles. You've taken back control, so choose discipline not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Choose it because no one else can build your life for you. Choose it because the vision you have in your heart is real and it deserves to be built with consistency, clarity, and fire. The undisciplined dream, the disciplined execute. And that execution is what separates a wish from a legacy.